Сьогоднішні наші гості
Our panelists represent the defense forces of Ukraine. They know what the war is about, what are the major components of the war, and they know the price of their daily toil at the front line. Let's start with Victoria Imlat-Kochenko. Victoria, welcome to the panel. Your unit performed military tasks in various places, including in Kharkiv region, and we had the honor to cooperate with your unit well. Kupiansk was liberated, and Kraken actually instilled awe and fear in the Russian troops. So you, being the representative of the most technologically intense troops of Ukraine, have witnessed this change in technology application. So what's your assessment of our current stage in technological development? You know, technological changes totally transform the nature of the warfare. And what we have had since 2022 have become ever more effective and efficient. Look at the artillery, for example. Artillery has become sharper, more accurate, and more efficient. We can see the battlefield and we can adjust fire more effectively. Roman, you being the Member of Parliament of Ukraine and at the same time one of those who joined the defense forces back in 2022 at the very beginning of the all-out war, in particular in the south, know that now the southern axis is the focus of attempts by the Russians to break through the front line. They use aviation, they use combat UAVs, and that changes the life in frontline territories. Suffice it to see videos from Kherson to appreciate the changes over time there. So it's a scaring perspective when you walk in the streets under the anti-drone net, and this is what the cities that are several hundred of kilometers away from the contact line can face in the very near future. Good morning. It's my pleasure to be with you. I would like to thank the organizers, Arseny, you, and the team that has put this forum together. It's extremely important to talk to the young people. I still believe I am young, but it pleases me and it inspires me when the young people are engaged, when they are prepared to support our common cause. I have been in the armed forces for 17 years, and when Taras said that I joined the defense forces back in 2022, no, it's not very accurate. I was a major in 2014 when the war just started, and I have this image and understanding of the nature of this aggressive incursion first and then all-out war by the Russian Federation. They started using various technologies back then. So indeed, technologies are important. And if you compare the war in 2022 and the war in 2023-2024, you will see totally different nature of warfare, different technologies, different approaches, and different implications, different consequences. So technologies are not just a buzzword that we are using here at a very respected forum with representatives of powers that be and youth organizations, but it is about electronic warfare, about intelligence, about unmanned vehicles. That's about tools that allow us to save lives of our soldiers at the battlefield and also our civilians in the rear. So this is what helps us protect our infrastructure. And we see the stats, how many Shahed drones are downed almost every night. So what Russia does with the drones is unbelievable. And we know that electronic warfare technologies often stop them mid-course. So I see the situation as a military officer and as a member of parliament. So what we do there as lawmakers is removing red tape, actually the barriers for the manufacturers to place their technologies on the front. So it is about tax policies, it is about customs policies, it's about something that prevents our defenders to get the necessary technologies speedily and efficiently. So yesterday alone we voted for 2 bills that will facilitate this access of technologies to the front line. And that requires our joint effort of you young people, of the volunteers, and today we celebrate the Volunteer Day, so I would like to congratulate those who really volunteer to support our armed forces on this occasion. So answering your question, Taras, what I see as the need for the technological development, I understand that the cutting-edge technologies transform the nature of the war, the warfare. I suppose that very soon we will have very broad gray zones, like 20-30 kilometers deep, with drones and nothing, no living beings. The technologies have been developing dramatically since 2022, and you quote from Kherson, but I think that everything within this depth of 20-30 kilometers would look like Kherson. And it is our task to control those kill zones or gray zones. I'm not embellishing, you know. You are all grown-ups and you should understand all of the risks that our country is currently facing. Speaking about Kherson, the situation is extremely dire there, and the adversary uses everything with drones, with glide bombs. My daughter, who's 16, tells me, you know, the drone, and she gives me the kind of the drone, have been launched from this very town in Russia, and she knows how long it takes for those drones to cover the distance to Ukraine. So we have to understand the situation and we have to support one another. Thank you, Roman. Yesterday, we heard the news that the aircraft of the Ukraine president was accompanied by 4 combat drones, and almost on a weekly basis, we hear about the quote-unquote unknown drones that would be hovering over military facilities, airports, or even attack the critical infrastructure. So we understand who is behind those attacks or incursions and unknown actions. We know this answer, and we ask ourselves, why wouldn't the NATO allies counteract properly? Is it the lack of political will or technological incapacity to put the barrier to those drones? So what's going on? How fast is the best practice of Ukrainian unarmed systems being incorporated by NATO countries?
Can you hear me? How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. And then maybe some questions from the audience. I'd like to speak about the technologies. Technologies are not just in the air. This is not just drones or the strategy of using the armed forces. If you take a look around, you'll see a lot of young people, and you see how many of them are girls and how many of them are men. This is probably shows us that a lot of males leave Ukraine, and this is a critical situation. So just take a look around and count how many men are among the young people. If you take a look around, you will see what I mean. Each of you have some acquaintances of yours who have laid down their lives for Ukraine, and there are those who have been at the front line for 4 years already without any rotation. This is also a key point. Bismarck used to say that the enemy advances where the priests and teachers have lost. So you can see that the enemy is advancing now where the Russian propaganda prevailed. Who knows, out of you who are not military, knows 5 alive heroes of Ukraine, their names? Just raise your hands. You do, right? We shouldn't be embarrassed. As a military, I know those names because they are my brethren, and I used to fight alongside them. The young people don't know. When deputies of local councils come for meetings, now they are changing the names of streets by way of communizing. And very often, even people from local authorities are not aware of the people who are heroes of Ukraine. If I ask you, what is the Ukrainian national idea about? Who can tell me what is the Ukrainian national idea? I am convinced that everyone will come up with your own individual answers, because it has not been formulated. Even though I am a young person, I'm only 34 years old, and my whole life is ahead of me if I don't get killed. But this is the task for your generation primarily, is to finally shape the Ukrainian national idea, which would encompass and embrace all the philosophy and character of the Ukrainian people. And this is also about technology. If we speak about our partners, answering your question, we are all fond of boxing, right? We know boxers like Usyk and so on. Yes, boxing is quite popular. Okay, if you take a look at the training sessions of Usyk, if you understand his sparring partners, if you look through all his fights, and if you attend all his fights and then analyze that, and then you are in the ring vis-a-vis Tyson Fury, will you be able to beat that person the way Usyk did? Will he be able to? No, of course not, because it takes a lot of training. And then comes the question for our partners and colleagues. You help us with equipment, with hardware, with money, with intelligence, and without you, Ukraine would have fallen. But obviously, being just observers and seeing how your technologies and ours work, you will not be able to efficiently engage the enemy in such a local war. Well, those technologies probably would not be necessary if we could make 1,500 sorties of fighter jets a day. Probably we would not have that many drones, but it's obvious that if the US or NATO countries make this number of sorties, this will be not just the threshold of the Third World War, it will be actually the Third World War in full scale. So most obviously the conflicts of the future will be the ones like what we have in Ukraine now. So our technologies and tactics really matter. If the partners cannot give the boots on the ground And if they cannot get trained the way USIC is training, then we have to find a finance to engage the military who would be fighting for money, and your officers would be able to get trained on that example. Russia engaged North Korea for combat operations. Do you think that they did this because they lacked personnel? No, there was an agreement between China and North Korea so that the Korean soldiers would gain combat experience. And if you take a look at the program of training of North Korea, you will see that they used the experience they gained in Ukraine. At the same time, the NATO countries do not have this experience because they is just observing from the sidelines. In order to become a champion, you have to get trained with the best, and you have to get engaged in combat actions, including by your personnel, boots on the ground. And as a follow-up to what Yurii has said, if you don't have much time to train, carry a gun with you.
Слушна порада.
Well, that's what our partners give us. Yes, this is a relevant point. Mykyta Nadtochii from Azov, Regiment of the National Guard of Ukraine. Mykyta, your regiment is one of the most hated in the Russian army. What is the ideology of the Russian elite forces which are fighting against the Ukrainian armed forces? If I understand your question correctly, what I think about the ideology of the Russian forces, right? Yes. Well, I believe they put more emphasis not on the ideology, but on fear. The fear is that if you do not carry out the order given to you by your commanders, you will most likely be killed in the quiet somewhere in the forest line, or you will be forced to go to combat under the barrel of a gun. And we very often see using drones, surveillance drones, when we see that the Russian soldiers go to combat just with sticks or with on crutches and walking aids. Well, what this shows that if you do not engage, you will be forced to. Well, obviously, Russia has always positioned itself as an imperialistic power, and all that history with the land grabs and all the stories that Europe is jeopardized by Russians. The previous speaker said quite correctly, this is basically an indication that our teachers and propaganda lost to the Russians, because in Russia they were being indoctrinated that we are a huge empire, we cannot but prevail over Ukraine. And when we take prisoners of war from Russia, they keep repeating the same narratives, which shows how badly they had been indoctrinated. As regards the code of war, as it were, I can say that no matter how the technologies are being developed now, of course, this is not developed the way it was in 2022 and so on. We have robots, we have very cool and high-tech devices, but definitely the gravitation center in the war activities, this is all about the infantry. The infantry soldiers who are seeing the enemy and have to shoot the enemy. Yes, we help with the drones. We try to make sure that the enemy does not come to our positions. We see the movement of the forces of the enemy, be it on foot or in columns, in convoys. We can back it up with logistics and so on. But if there are no infantry soldiers on the battlefield, we will definitely lose this war. The whole system is soldier-centered, and without this, we would not be able to prevail. I'd like to follow up on this about the attitude of the enemy to Azov. They even envy us, I would say. We try to borrow the best practices from detachments like Azov, Kraken, and so on. Khartia, probably. And we try to emulate them, and we are very thankful to them for that. Mykola Zinkevych, commander of the company of anti-aircraft forces. We see that our enemy has a number of methods to encourage mobilization, and at the same time we need to do it otherwise. We follow what you do by way of advertising and selling the military service to the young people. What attracts the young people in Ukraine most, and what are they guided by if they in their decisions to join the armed forces, including the corps like yours? Thank you. If we take a look at what attracts young people and what advertising is successful, this is primarily about doing it not in the old way, the way it did by Soviet ideology. We don't have slogans like according to the law and so on. We have two major points: the implementation of military tasks and discipline, and all the rest is backed up by training. And we have very streamlined interaction between the commanders and the soldiers. Soldiers, the officers, all of our military, they communicate on the same wavelength. The weight of the sergeants is the largest and most influential because they are the closest to the battlefield. So we have not just the young people who come to serve. We also have people who used to go a wall, and now they come back from a wall and they join us. We have some 50% of people who used to go a wall, and some 10% are the old personnel of our brigade. If we speak about the code of the war, for me, the issue of technology and the young people, these are absolutely equal notions. Because I recall the year 2022 when I and my brethren in arms, we were people of 20, 22 years old. We were in Zaporizhia, Axis, and all the methodologies that we used came from the young people.
So the youth is driving force for technologies and innovations in the units. At least it was like this with us. It's easier for youth to accept technologies and innovations and to generate them. That's why these two notions are equal for us. Speaking about technological processes at the front line, Yes, a human foot soldier will never be substituted with something in the trench, but the means the drones, observation, reconnaissance drones have substituted reconnaissance aircraft or foot reconnaissance, correction, observation, so it's allowed people to use people for other tasks. Robotic systems are used at the moment in our core. 50% of logistics is used by them. Other 50% are vampires or heavy bombers and others. So they all logistics currently is based on technological processes. Speaking about the kill zone, it's a distance of 10 to 20 kilometers. It is very difficult for vehicles to approach front line 20 kilometers. It's very difficult. We are moving further, and every day technologies take over more and more processes from foot soldiers. But on the other hand, the enemies use the same, and the soldier in the trench is subject to attack by all the technologies in the front line, various types of distance influence. All that is focused on infantrymen, and this works both sides. And those win are not those who invented technologies or decided how to use it, but those who can upscale it at a longer distance and use it. We all remember FPV, how they appeared, how we were ahead of all in this, but now it's not like that. That's why I'm calling upon the youth represented here. Technologies should be upscaled, should become more and more new technological means of attack should be used, because we should not allow ourselves to lose in technological scale. And because we'll never have more people than the enemy, we should use our technologies to amplify our opportunities and abilities. We still have about 17 minutes, which I asked you to reserve for your answering your questions. Please raise your hand, and some of the assistants will come to you with the microphone. And please speak as briefly as possible, and say who you address your question to. Good afternoon. I'm Artem Kiselov, military instructor, and the author of the book, Instructor, the Combat Spirit. My question is to Yurii. What is more important for the troops, technologies or psychological preparation? And the second question, what technologies have really changed the course of warfare in 2025? In fact, it's a very broad question. What is the main challenge for Ukrainians? People who are present here, they do not solve. We also are troubled by attacks in order to reduce the number of hits at our infrastructure. First of all, we have to start seeing the enemy at the expense of radars. Who is producing radars? Our partners. Ukraine doesn't produce enough radars. It is obvious that solving the 17-to-1 radar is about 6 military. Those people who are present here in this room, mainly girls, will they serve as operators of a radar? a radar operator, believe me, every one of you can be a radar operator. That's why the issue of formation of a single electronic environment became one of the key points in the air combat. And the second, speaking about the front line, maybe the major attack drones now are fiber optic drones. Russians are better than Ukrainian. This because they get direct supply of better component and optical fiber from China. As a result, Ukrainian armed forces face the big problem because they hit logistics. And it's a very big problem for the military. It's not only about ammunition, it's about evacuation of wounded personnel, medical protocols. The partners who drafted these protocols using tourniquets for assisting wounded people were based on the assumption that the helicopter would evacuate people, and nobody thought that the soldier would not be evacuated by a helicopter from the battlefield. So now you could use 2 soldiers to evacuate a wounded person from the front line, and they will risk their lives. So accordingly, we developed the robotic systems. I'm grateful to our colleagues from other units who are among the advanced units who developed those systems. And we use their experience using robotics evacuation systems. And the next, what Roman Kostenko said, that in 2026 we will see absolutely different battlefield where there will be 20-25 kilometers to the enemy, will be the green territory where our infantry will be situated. Everything would be done to help the infantrymen to survive under this difficult situation of total kill zone. So this is the major issues. Radars, drones, interceptors, and fiber optic drones. They are game changers at the moment. But when we recruit people, we will not promise you that you will be, if you are pilots of the drones, you will be sitting somewhere in Kyiv and operate the drone. But the enemy decided to separate engineers and pilots. Engineers will be sitting close to the front line, and the pilots will be sitting somewhere far away. It's an issue of money and flight experience, and they know that pilots need more experience. The same with us. We need to cover the combat line and then to divide the experts in using technologies. Even more, I'm sure that there is no person in this room who would not be able to cope with those modern technologies. You just need to be persistent.
Я не знаю, як з того вийти. В мене воюють дівчата по 18-19 років.
I have girls, 18-19-year-old, fighting with us. These are kids who are fighting with us on Pokrovsk area. And they allow me to understand that there is nothing impossible in this world. The most important thing is what is inside you. And inside Ukrainians, there is a steel rod inside. Speaking about technologies, I could say that in Ukraine, the enemy are actively working on automation of the processes. That's why I believe that the future belongs to automation. This is my understanding of this automation of management of troops, the automation of management like drones in multiple formations, and maybe in the future we'll see the operator sitting at the remote control and taken under control the air where hundreds of drones would automatically fly, scan, photograph the enemy lines, come back for recharging and so on. I know that the work is in progress on this, so we may come to a situation where these gray zones will be fully automated. This is yet another point to what technologies can change and this automation of the processes for people to be subject to fewer threats. I remember when we were liberating Kherson, we had to attack, and there were many mobilized people. I used to say that this war will be won by those who will not get mobilized people on the battlefield, substitute them with other means. Thank you. More questions? I see a hand. Good morning. My question is about the fact that advancement takes place where teachers lost the war. I must say that in the system of education, the senior forms school children already start learning, studying how to defend Ukraine. I think that it's extremely important to implement, to introduce these programs at schools. I couldn't understand everything, how you are going to build our policy towards a younger generation kids in the area of national patriotic upbringing, because the senior school children once a month go to special training places, and I'm interested how this could be used for younger children as it is done for teenagers. We understand that the family should do everything, but how this could be done at the state level? It's a good question. I would look deeper into this question. I would say that the whole system of our society in the future should be based not on the full militarization, but on engagement of all elements of the society into preparation. And what other speakers said, the issue of medical support, elementary things like drones, technologies, should be studied at the junior school. I know that the Ministry of Defense is engaged into this sort of military education, but we have to divide it into certain ideological things, like stories about heroes and history of what's going on now, because it's already a weapon. Even the absence of Ukrainian content in YouTube, it's also a weapon, and we have to prepare children to this. I think this preparation should start earlier. Children should start understanding what the weapon is, not to militarize them, but to prepare them to defend their country against aggression. Once I read why there are no military activities against Northern Korea. They're the biggest enemy of the United States, and we understand that the countries
the estimate is that if attacked, 90% of the population of that country would stand up to the enemy and will fight with arms in their hands. That's what their calculation is. Then when it comes to school, perhaps we should think of the culture of handling weapons or arms. We have to educate young people that there should be special culture of handling weapons, and perhaps we should also introduce the permits for the legitimate ownership of arms, and each community should be developing such cultures through shooting ranges, through accessibility of technologies, including Miltech. So we have to develop this culture, and that will be a factor of deterrence. And in the Ministry of Defense, there is a separate education department, and some of the MPs, like Roman Rozovsky, my comrade in Roms, and Ina Sovsun, promote this approach. And I know that the 3rd Assault Brigade and Assault and ACHILLES Brigade also contribute to that. So they participate in awareness raising amongst young children and teenagers. But you are right, there should be a policy in place, and we should start from early ages. Shall we start with the question and then comments if you need. Thank you very much for your work and for your presentations. I am Vadim Baranets. I'm the PhD student of Chernivtsi University. So Yurii was right. Indeed, we don't have this national idea for Ukrainians, but we do know how the basic idea works in Azov or in the ACHILLES unit. How should we be stimulating the formulation of this national idea at this multi-layered and very diverse society of Ukraine? Look, you've heard our opinions on this issue. From the very beginning, from the young age, we should be speaking Ukrainian, we should be educating children about our history. Just since 2014, a lot has changed, and we already have this recent history. Since 2014, it is a history of war, of standing up to all of the attempts by the enemy to destroy us as a nation. So we should raise awareness of the children. We should explain it to them that their task is not just to rebuff aggression with aggression, but you should understand the historic roots. How many times Russian Empire or the Soviet Union fought against the Ukrainian language? What is the history of this war? So we should act as eye-openers to the young generation, explaining it to them why we should be developing along these lines, because if we are not prepared, we will be exterminated. So even if the conflict is frozen soon, it won't remain frozen long. And we won't be able to exhale and say everything is over. Thank you to the partners. Thank you to our comrades in arms. We can go back home. No, it won't be like this. We will have to be constantly combat prepared. we cannot relax, and we should be fully aware of that. That would not be an end. Russians will never let us be.
Я хотів звернутися до вас, ви задавали запитання. Ви дуже
You ask a question. I think you are very wrong if you ask people which are the ideas in Azov, in Kraken, in the ACHILLES unit. These are the people who are motivated in their heart, but they were not educated by schools or by the society. That's their inherent approach. We cannot migrate from this place. Ukraine will not be relocated. We will always be bordering on the Russian Federation. Russia will never disappear, and we will always be in those tense relations with the Russian Federation. And you might be politicians, you might be historians or philosophers, but you know that politicians are very receptive to sociology. They are listening to what people are saying because they need to echo then their words. They have to promise them what they want. Does everyone like the idea that your child would be educated to use technical medicine or tactical medicine techniques or the use of arms, etc. There is not a single parent who would like their children to be in combat. So politicians should make a very difficult but conscious choice and decision. They should introduce this education, military education, in the elementary schools and in high school and then at university. If we introduce this course of training Ukrainians as a nation, then should another incursion occur, then we will have people prepared, and their preparation will have lasted for 5 to 6 years, and you will see that they will be better prepared for the combat. Because the better soldier is the one who has been preparing for the combat for years, rather than 60 days, as is the case today. So what Roman is saying, if the adversary before attacking us assesses our combat capabilities, the number of missiles, tanks, munitions, etc., and then the morals, if they know that our people are combat ready rather than the equipment is combat ready, they will try to use other methods to affect us through politicians, through certain ideological attacks, etc. So you, when you become parents, you should appreciate that for your children and your grandchildren not to have to go to war, they have to be prepared. If you wish peace, get prepared for the war. Thank you very much, and I thank to all the panelists that was called Code of War. We spoke about new technologies and motivation that drives us as well as our adversary. So if you could thank yet again Victoria Mladkachenko, Mykola Makar Zinkevych, Mykyta, Raz-Dva Nadtochii, Yurii Fedorenko, and Roman Kostenko, who have been with us at this panel. Thank you very much